Now we will go for another part of our work, that you can say hindbrain, that is called cerebellum. Now this cerebellum, when you have taken, it will be the thing that what you should know about. So this is what the cerebellum. This is the cerebellum. So this is what you should know. So this is the membrane. This is the pons. This is the medulla oblongata. This one is the fourth ventricle. So now you have to have that of the, you can say, cerebellum. So cerebellum is nothing but it is the part of that of the hindbrain or a rhombencephalon, which is the largest. It is the largest part. Now this is where you can say cerebellum. It is present on the median plane and it is separating from the water pons and the water medulla oblongata and the hindbrain by means of the fourth ventricle. Other way it is said to be as it is present behind the midbrain, pons, medulla oblongata or the brain stem, as well as it is present behind the fourth ventricle and its content in the posterior cranial fossa. In the posterior cranial fossa, fully under the shelter of the tentorial cerebelli, which is a part of a fold of the water, that of the dura mater, that which has been already talked along with the water meninges, especially the cranial part, or rather which covers the water brain and suit. But there it is. Now this here you can say cerebellum, which is there like this. It forms the roof of fourth ventricle of the brain. Now this is where you can say the cerebellum. If you compare with the water cerebrum, this cerebellum is 1:8. Cerebellum is compared with the water that of the cerebrum. If the cerebellum is 1, cerebrum is 8 times bigger in an adult. But in infants or in the newly born neonates, it is 1:8. 20. That is cerebellum versus cerebrum. The size is like this. So this is what the thing what you will be getting. And now what is the weight of the water that of the, you can say, cerebellum? Weight is round about approximately 150 grams. Now after having had this, now we have to go to the water. Almost all. This you can say cerebellum. It is completely covered by. It is completely covered by. Not only the water that of the, where you can say tentorial cerebelli, which is a part of that of the, where you can say dura mater. Then it is also covered by arachnoid matter, and it is covered by the water that of the, where you can say pia matter. This pia matter will be covering the entire, where you can say cerebellum, which is present in the water, that of the posterior cranial fossa. Now this you can say cerebellum is not as big as that cerebrum, but this cerebellum, it forms the water that of the, where you can say part of the water that of the hindbrain, part of the hindbrain. Or rhombencephalon. Rhombencephalon. This cerebellum, when it has been viewed, it will be a what? Almost all. Lobes are there. There are the water that of the, where you can say this thing, it will be going to appear like this on either side, where it is constricted in the middle, this part. This part is said to be as a constricted median part of cerebellum, is called as the vermis. Because of the vermis, this you can say cerebellum will be dividing into what? Two lobes. One is, this is the right lobe, and this one is the left lobe. So you have got like this. Now this cerebellum, like this, which will be there having all day, you will be going to get the water that will be, where you can say some parts. Now those parts, that what you will be going to have. This is what you are seeing, anterior view. Like that way, you will be going to get the water one more. So this will be there like this. This will be the what? Posterior view. For your understanding purpose. So you will be having like this way here. This is anterior view. For the purpose of understanding this. So you will be having here also. Now this part, what you will be going to get, there are the what some notches on the anterior view, so where you can get this. This is what the anterior notch. So anterior cerebellar notch. So you will be going to have, when that thing will be going to meet at this posteriorly, you will be going to get like this. So here, so this notch, when you will be having the upper row, this may be the what posterior cerebellar notch. So it will be there like this. So this is will be the posterior cerebellar notch. Then you will be going to have the what? These notches, what you are getting, posterior and anterior cerebellar notch, these will be there in the what? Median plane. So that median plane will be going to produce what? Some notches in front and some notch, it will be the what? Posterior notch, and this will be the what? Anterior notch. This will be the posterior notch, considering this is the what? The two lobes of the cerebellum. Now this will be the what? Anterior cerebellar notch. So you will be having those notches. They are there on the median plane. Now these where you can say this posterior cerebellar notch which will be there. There will be a what? One part of the water, that of the where you can say the fold of the water, that of the dura mater will be there. That is called as a falx. That is called as a falx cerebelli. This falx cerebelli is a part of that of the where you can say dura mater, which will be going to come and fits into this posterior cerebellar notch. Thereby you will be having these two divisions. That is what is said to be as a right and the left lobe of the what? That of the cerebellum. But these notches will be going to have the what? On the anterior surface and on the posterior surface, which is goes and take the name as together. It is what called as a what? Hormus. So to have a better understanding of this, I may give the example of that. You try to, you can say, take the balloon which is completely filled by the water, that of the air inside, and put the water rubber band. You will be going to get the water two bulged portion, one right and one left, where that band will be there, that may be taken as a water furnace. So this is what how you can get into an idea. Now this is the furnace. Now on the lobes, right and the left, there are the water, some you can say ingone part of the water, that of the grey matter of the cerebellum, and there are some you can say bulged part. So bulged part, they have got the very many names, and ingone part, they have got a what? That of the names called as a water fissures. So on the lobes you have got the what? Said to be as a lobules, lobes, and the what? Ingone part of the grey matter between the two lobules is called as a water fissures. There are fissures and the lobes and the lobules on the water lobes of the cerebellum. Like manner, in the water hermes, not only on the water front part, that is called an anterior cerebellar notch, even on the water that of the posterior part of the water, that of the vermes, and the upper part of the vermes, so this is, and the lower part of the vermes, you have got the water. Some you can say elevated part. So those elevated part has got the different names. Different names. So the cerebellum is like this way, how it is placed, located in the what that of the posterior cranial fossa. In the fossa for the cerebellum to lodge in the posterior cranial fossa below the transverse groove for the transverse sinus and above and behind the water posterior arc of the water that of the foramina magnum, which is present in the occipital lobe of the cerebellum. Occipital bone of the cerebellum, occipital bone, foramina magnum, which is present, means the cerebellums are lodging in the water that of the posterior cranial fossa, one on either side of the water internal occipital crust, below the groove for the water that of the transverse sinus, and above and behind, means behind and above the foramina magnum, which is present in the occipital bone, occipital bone at its internal part in the posterior cranial fossa. So this is what, how it is the thing, it will be there. Now this you can say either the vermis or the water that of the right lobe and the left lobe of the cerebellum has got the water, some you can say ingone part, which have been said just now as a what fissures and elevated part, those are called as a what? Lobules or the lobus simplex, which have got the different size and the shapes. Names have been given accordingly. And even on the vermis, which will be there in front, which will be there on the superior part, inferior part and the posterior part, they are the what, some elevated parts. They have got the different names. And ingone part between the lobules or the what, elevated part of the gray matter in the lobules, lobes of the cerebellum, they have got the different names. So it means the cerebellum, which has got all these, they have got the very fanciful names, very fanciful names. Full names. Where the student should not get burdened just to memorize all those things, but they should have that idea. Like how the elevated part of the gray matter, it will be there in the water that of the cerebrum, known as a gyrus, and ingone part which will be there in that cerebrum is called as a gyrus. So here elevated part has got the water lobules, lobus simplex, ala and all. But lobus simplex, biventral lobes, superior semilunar lobe, inferior semilunar lobes, and the ingone part which is there in the cerebrum, they are compared to the water that of the fissures. They are the fissures. The same thing it will be going to occur for the water that of the vermis at the top, upper part, lower part, behind part, and the water in front. They have got the water that of the lingular, decilva, folium, tonsils, and then you have got the what here, the nodule. So like these, they are the things. They have got the very fanciful names where you will be going to become burdened. So this burden, in order to avoid, you should know that these are the parts of the water that of the some ingone part and there some out protruded part of the gray matter of the water that of the cerebellum. Like gray matter and the water that of like the gyri and the water sulci of the broad sense, the you can say cerebellum has got the what that of the superior surface, inferior surface, and if you have got these superior and inferior surfaces big, they are occupying. Why they are big? Because the water tentorial cerebelli will be going to spread over it. Below that tentorial cerebelli you have got the water cerebellum in the posterior cranial fold, which will be becoming a tent-like. So this you can say surface, superior and inferior surface, has got the water cornice, that is the median constricted part, and as well as it has got the water lobes. In the same pattern, inferior surface, which is a big, which will be completely in relation to the water, that of the, where you can say lobe of means a fossa for the cerebellum to lodge in the posterior cranial fossa, which is related to the fossa for the water, that of the lobes of the water, cerebellum to lodge, and it is covered by the water endosteal layer of the water, that of the dura mater, meningeal layer of the dura mater, arachnoid matter, pia matter. So this all it is covered. Endosteal layer, meningeal layer, arachnoid matter, pia matter. So this is the inferior surface relation, and it is related to the water fossa for the water, that of the lobes of the cerebellum to lodge, which will be present below the water groove for the transverse sinus, just you can say behind and above the water, that of the you can say foramina magnum, which is present in the bone called as occiput. So this is the relation. Now this inferior surface, especially for the lobes, has got the water, that of the elevated part of the water grey matter, and the water ingone part of known as the fissures at the lobes, and also it has got the median ingone part known as the water cornice. Then the superior surface is almost all, it will be there on the lobes right and the left, and as well as it will be there at the what median constricted part, that is called as the cornice. Now on the water, that of the superior surface, it is related to the water, that of the tentorial cerebelli, part of the water, that of the arachnoid matter, and then it is related to the water, that of the pia matter. Now either the what inferior surface or the superior surface, when it has got the covering made by the parts of the meninges, now all this, it is also related to the water, that of the you can say spaces. Now those spaces are called the extradural space, this is dural space, subdural space, and then the subarachnoid space, which contains the water, that of the where you can say cerebrospinal fluid, that will be there. So this is inferior surface. Superior surface is also, it is related to the water, that is there will be no extradural space, but you will be having the water dural space, subarachnoid, subdural space. This is what the water is during dural space, and this is the arachnoid space. There will be no you can say extradural space and then the dural space, but you will be going to have the what? This is the tentorial. You will be going to get these two. Apart from that, you will be going to get the what at this point? The what? Inferior, I mean to say medullary anterior means a superior medullary valve, which will be there in the what that of the subarachnoid space. Then you will be going to get the what? Now these are the surfaces. Now you will be going to get the what? Here only you have got the anterior cerebellar notch, posterior cerebellar notch. Now these notches are in one part of the water, that of the where you can say on the anterior part, and the what in one part of the water, that is the posterior part, in the what median plane respectively. Now these things, as it will be there at the in the median plane, but as they run towards laterally at the lobes, they will be going to also have the water that of the where you can say not only the elevated part of the grey matter and the in one part of the water that of the grey matter, so they are there on the water surfaces. That is the anterior surface and the water posterior where those notches as they run on either side. But the anterior part of the water that of the lobes is a smaller, and the posterior part of the water that of the where you can say which you see, that will be also little bit comparatively bigger, but occupying the water smaller space, superior and inferior surface. How that you can say small where you can say posterior surface is also having on its where you can say median plane called as the water posterior cerebellar notch. As it will be going to run, it expands on either side, it will be going to have the little bit bigger area than the what anterior portion. Comparatively it is a what smaller than the water superior and inferior surface of the water lobes. It will be having also the elevated part of the grey matter and the water in one called as the water fissures. So these are the things that what you will be going to get. Now the thing will be there, what are those you can say fissures, how they look or how they form, and in what way they are referred to as. Now that thing we have to see little bit for the understanding, nothing else, nothing else. So few I will be going to show on this. You will be having, this is the bigger way. So you will be going to take this part out. It will be there like everything. Now we have to go to the word that of the vermis. So this part is called as what is said to be as a ligule. Ligule. This part, what it will be there for the understanding purpose as a water that of this central lobe. Central lobe. Now you will be going to get the water that of the you can say decil. Then you will be going to get the word of folium. Then you will be going to get the tuber. Then you will be having a pyramid. Then you will be going to have the water distinct luole. And this will be the water node. Now this vermis will be there like this, it is the constricted, but there are the some divisions. Now these names are totally, for pronunciation it becomes very fanciful. And these things, vermis, it will be there on the superior part, it will be there on the anterior part, it will be there on the what inferior part, and it will be there on the what posterior part. Means anterior cerebellar notch, posterior cerebellar notch it will be having, and the what median upper portion, median lower portion it will be having. Now we will go to the what lobes. So respectively, this will be the what definitely the what right lobe. This will be the what definitely the left lobe. Now on the lobes, now what are the things are present? Now from the what this thing, you will be going to get the like this. This one is called as the what post-central fissure. Post-central fissure. This is the post-central fissure. Then you will be going to have this. Now this fissure, it is known as the what fissure prima. Fissure prima. Then this thing, post-lunate fissure. Post-lunate fissure. This thing, horizontal fissure. Horizontal fissure. Then this fissure is called as here, this thing, pyramidal fissure. Pyramidal fissure. Then you have got this thing, retrotonsillar fissure. Retrotonsillar fissure. Retrotonsillar fissure. And you have got one fissure here. This fissure is posterolateral fissure. So this fissure is the posterolateral fissure. Now the question is what now? What about this now here? This is called as the ala. This is called as the quadrangular lobe. This is called as the quadrangular lobe. Then you have got this is the lobus simplex. Lobus simplex. Then this one, superior semilunar lobe view. This one is inferior semilunar lobule. Then you have got this is the biventral lobe. Biventral lobe. This is what is said to be as a tonsil. This is called as a tonsil. Then this one like this, called as a oculus. This is called as a oculus. Now this thing from nodule to this. So these are the, here you can say, things are there which will be there one after the another. This is the oculus. Now this will be there, posterolateral will be there at that, between the water oculus and the water tonsil, and it will be coming from this. Now like this way, you will be going to get here also, and this will be the water. Like this way, it will be appearing even on this. So these are the things that what you will be going to get into the views. These are the things what one must know. Now the thing is what? This is what the division and the subdivisions of this. Now you will be going to get the water that of the, where you can say this whole hormista and the lobe and the subdivisions of the water that of the, you can say hormista, which will be there on the anterior cerebellar notcha, posterior cerebellar notcha, and on the superior surface and inferior surface. Apart from that, the lobes and the subdivisions of the lobes and the fissures, which will be there on the upper surface or which will be there on the lower surface, means inferior surface, and on the anterior part very smaller and the posterior part little bit bigger, but comparatively smaller than the water superior and the inferior surface of the lobes. Has got the water division mainly anterior lobe, then middle lobe, then the third, you have got another lobe. That lobe is called your oculonodular lobe. Now this oculonodular lobe, it might be said to be as a posterior lobe for understanding. Now these things, the what that of broad lobes. Now on the anterior lobe, you have got a vermicelli, you have got a lobe. Middle lobe, you have got from here to. This is what? Up till. This is what is said to be as anterior. This is the anterior. Including pyramid and so this will be the anterior lobe. Now the middle lobe is this. Then this to this is the what? Oculonodular lobe, or it is said to be as posterior. These are the things. But developmentally, anterior lobe plus pyramid and uvula. These things, anterior lobe plus pyramid and uvula, it will be developed from Cerebellum. Cerebellum. cerebral vesicles. Cerebral vesicles from the neural tube, neural cleft or the notochord. That is the behind swelling. Then comes the middle lobe. So this middle lobe plus folium, this is, and ligule and the node this middle lobe second, it is developed by neo cerebellum, while the third, this point, node, folium and this. These all things is by archeo cerebellum of cerebral swellings. Cerebellum or a cerebellum swellings of the notochord or of the neural tube. So broadly you have got the anterior lobe, middle lobe, oculonodular, that is the posterior. Now this, when you go for the what? Developmental aspect, or rather it's a developmental part. They are got the what? Cerebellar swellings. As that notochord, neural tube, neural cleft develops downwards and backwards and little downwards, you will be going to have the anterior bulgings and the posterior bulging. Posterior upper bulging is this. Now there you have got this anterior, that will be there, anterior lobe, pyramid by the what? Paleocerebellum. But middle lobe, it is totally by the what? Neo-cerebellum swellings from the cerebellum swelling. Then the what? Archeo, that is the oculonodular, that will be developed from this oculus node and folium and the what? Ligule is by the what? Archeo cerebellum. So this is what you have to remember. Now after having had this, now you will be going to have the blood supply. Blood supply for the what? That of the, where you can say cerebellum. Blood supply for the cerebellum. For the cerebellum, it is by the water that of the, you can say, cerebellar arteries, that is antero-superior cerebellar arteries, postero-inferior cerebellar arteries, which are the branches of that of the, you can say, circle of Willis. Circle of Willis. Or circulosis, arteriosis. circulosis, arteriosus. Now this circulosis, arteriosus or the water circle of Willis is formed by the water two vertebral arteries, one on either side, and from front internal carotid, that to cerebral part of the internal carotid artery. They together forms a circle by means of union of one arc of a circle to the another arc of a circle at the base of the brain. Fully that circle of Willis is covered by the pia mater, arachnoid matter, and the water meningeal layer of the dura mater, and even the endosteal layer of the dura mater. That will be there all the way with cerebrospinal fluid intact. So that will be there. Now what is the venous drainage? Venous drainage of the water, that of the you can say cerebellum, is by the corresponding veins, that is anterior superior cerebellar veins, posterior inferior cerebellar veins. They will be there, and automatically it will be going to pour into the water transverse sinus and then into the sigmoidal sinus, and part of which it will be going to pour into the water that of the superior, inferior, anterior. So like this way it will be the thing. So venous drainage is over. There will be a no lymphatic drainage for this, but that is will be totally replaced by the water that of the cerebrospinal fluid which will be there in the water. Fourth ventricle of brain. There will be a no lymphatic drainage for the brain as such, but that is replaced by cerebrospinal fluid. Okay. Then coming to the what? Two things you have to deal. One will be the water. The cut section means in order to know the internal, you have to take a cut here. So those are what is said to be other. You have to take the cut and see internally what it will be having. This is the one part is left. Second part, it has been left. Connections of the water, that of the cerebellum. Connections of the cerebellum. So these two has been left along with applied anatomy. Applied anatomy. But I will be going to finish here only the development. The development of the water, that of the urine, you can say. Or embryology. It is developed from the water, that of the urine, you can say notochorda or the neural cleft. Then suddenly it will be going to become as a what? As that notochord runs or the neural tube, neural cleft runs behind and downwards, it will be producing the two swellings, one front and one behind. Front will be going to develop the water, that of the brainstem, while the water behind it will be going to develop of the what neural tube or a cleft notochord will be going to become as a water swelling. That swelling is called as the cerebellar swelling. That cerebellar swelling, suddenly it will be going to become constricted in the middle of Hermes, and then it will be going to develop as a water. Two, one right and one left, on either side of the median plane in the posterior cranial fossa, which is lodged in the fossa for the cerebellum to lodge in the what occipital bone, just above, means behind and little above the water, that is the foramen magnum. So there, that will be the part it will be going to become swelling, called as a what? As that further development, it is called as the cerebellum. So this is the development. Thank you hearing a talk on cerebellum. Thank you one and all.